Okay, Matrix Live. It's Core Team Demo Day. We've got some great stuff lined up, and also excitingly, we have two first-time demoers in Simon and Eric. But the headlines are: Keegan is going to show off Cerulean. Andrew is going to tell us all about room knocking. Simon's going to talk to us about VoIP designs and improving UX for native matrix calls. Eric is going to talk about the Gitter bridge, and I think he's going to show us it actually sending messages back and forwards. And then finally, Bruno is going to give us an update on hydrogen. So, Keegan, are you ready to go?
I think so. I think I'm ready. I will share.
Right, you have the floor.
Wonderful, thank you. You can see my wonderful, wonderful slideshow of 4 slides. So Cerulean was basically just a way of experimenting with threading in Matrix. I've lost my mouse. Okay, that's fine. Experimenting with threading in Matrix. So the context here is that we kind of can't do this at the moment. So the one on the left is a Reddit thread, and one on the right is kind of the new style Twitter threads. And we can't really do this. We can't have arbitrary nesting and stuff like that. In reply to is only 1 level deep. And it would be kind of cool if we could do this. So for the past 2 weeks, I've been working on Cerulean, which is a very rapid proof of concept to see if we could get this to work. And part of that involved writing a new MSC, a threading MSC, which basically defines 3 things: a way of referencing other events, a way of querying those relationships, and what limitations there are, or no limitations in this case, to which events that can be referenced. So you can actually do cross-room references in other rooms, which means that you end up with something that looks a bit like this. So at the top here, Alice sends a first message saying hello, and then 2 people responded, Bob and Charlie, to that message. And then Alice responds to Bob's message, and Bob responds to Alice's message. And that will create a thread which you could then visualize, and that is what I will very briefly show you. This is what Cerulean is all about. It's basically doing threading. Let me hide that now. Cool. So I want this one. So here is Cerulean, and this is kind of like the main page. This is a post which I've made. So if I click on this post, I can see that there's a bunch of replies. This looks very much like Reddit in terms of the kind of nesting that's involved and happening here. So I'm going to go and respond to this message to try to show you how other things are being done here. And hopefully, if Matthew is out there, he can respond to my hi there and let me know when he has done so, because this does not currently live update, so it doesn't use /sync to live update. So I need to refresh the page when that's done.
Try refreshing.
Thank you. And now if I do that, hello, there we go. So you can see that he's responded to my message, and yeah, this all seems to work. And I can then click through onto here, and then you can see just the context here. This one is the parent, which again, I can kind of walk my way up the parent until I get to the very top of the thread as well. So that's Cerulean. This is what I've been doing for 2 weeks. So it's very rapid. The one thing I'd like to highlight is kind of what's happening behind the scenes here. So you can kind of see this is this is implemented in Dendrite. So if you have a Dendrite server, you'll be able to actually go and run this. If I go onto here and then go onto here, you can see what's actually happened here. So there's 2 rooms really. Any message I send goes into this room, and any message that Matthew sends goes into this room. And if I look at one of these messages, so his hello Keegan message, you can see there is this little JSON object here, which just references the event ID of the message that he was responding to. And that's as complicated as it is. There's a lot of history visibility checks which need to be done, and ideally we would peek into the room first to make sure that so you didn't have to join all these rooms. But at the moment, without peaking, you have to join the rooms, and there's a bit of legwork to go on there. There's a few optimizations we can do. But critically, this is actually only one event, and that can be referenced all over the place, which is quite nice. So there's no duplication of events happening here either. And yeah, that's basically about it. You can run it. There's a MSC 2836 branch on Dendrite, and Cerulean is available on GitHub, and you can go and try it out for yourself. That's it. Thank you.
Fun. Very happy that we can.
Sorry, this conversation seems to be going on in several rooms. Could you explain how that is happening?
So when let me briefly. So you remember the little diagram I showed you with the multiple rooms. So what's happening there is when you hit the event relationships endpoint, it will look across multiple rooms. What it will actually do is you give it an event ID, which is the event you want to look at the relationships for, and it will go and query and see if it knows about the parent. So it does a database lookup. And if it does, and if you're in that room, then it will go and continue following that thread all the way up. But you have to be authorized to see all these events. If you're not authorized, you won't be able to see them. Does that kind of answer your question? So there's a new endpoint, basically.
Right. Might have to read the MSC to get the full picture.
Sure.
I think we're getting a lot of background noise from somewhere, possibly Mathieu.
Yeah, sorry, it was me. I was going to basically ask the same question, except that it's more like, why do we need several rooms to do that? I still didn't get it.
Yeah, so let me try answering it. In this particular model, we're basically doing a Twitter or Mastodon style thing where people have timelines where they post messages, and some of those messages might be replying to other people's things. And there's a little bit of a question as to whether you replicate the messages over multiple rooms so that you can read them in context within a timeline and they make sense in Matrix, or whether you just strip them between the two. But that is why it's ended up being over a mix of rooms. But the actual MSC and the actual implementation doesn't have to be cross-room. It could equally well be within a single room.
Yeah, exactly.
So at the moment, it's a room per user.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess the goal is to use these MSCs to do some same style of threading inside Matrix at the end. I mean...
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, this is completely generic mechanism for going and building trees of threads within Matrix, basically.
Okay, cool, great, thanks.
DAGs on top of DAGs.
It's DAGs all the way down. Let me talk to you about DAGs.
And it's worth pointing out, this is a real-life example of using Dendrite as a place to experiment and try out some of the more bleeding-edge MSCs that we have flying around. And it enables us just to move at lightning pace and get this kind of stuff just there. And we can actually use it in real life and see how it feels.
Yep, exactly. So I've actually tried to structure the Dendrite code base anyway in such a way that it's very easy to go and add on these things. So there's a concept of hooks now, which allows you to hook into bits of the Dendrite code base. So I'm using it for whenever there's a new event which gets published to a room, it calls a callback, which then adds these relationships into its own separate database for this MSC.
Very nice, very nice. All right. Next up is Andrew. What's all this knocking business, Andrew?
Why, that's a great question, Neil. Let me explain it to you in a series of words and images. Right, so hopefully you can see my screen now. So,
Negatory.
Yeah, cannot.
I will wait a moment and pray.
There we go.
Yeah, okay, cool. So knocking originated way back in the beginning of the spec. There was an m.knock event, and it was put in as a placeholder, and we knew we wanted to do something with it in the future, but it never really materialized until a community member came along named Cerulean and sought use of this feature for her bridges. So she went ahead and wrote up this MSC, it's 2403, and it was a proposal for how knock would work both on a local home server and over federation and all sorts of different things, and it's quite lengthy. And she also made an initial implementation. which was super exciting. But you might ask, why exactly would this be useful for everyone? Well, there's two reasons. The first one is in Matrix, you can have an invite-only room, and this is nice. But there also is a convenience to having a publicly joinable room, in the sense that you can post a room alias somewhere and people can click it and join, and there's no friction. With an invite-only room, people have to PM an admin or someone with invite permissions to invite them to the room, and there's just a little bit of a process there. Other services get around this with invite links, which we might have at some point. But what we really want is some way for a person to request access to a room, and then someone can approve that, or maybe you can write a script to approve people based on something in their profile or what have you. So this is kind of what knocking allows. Knocking allows you to ask for access to a room from a user, or anyone in the room really that has the authority to accept that knock. So what it effectively does is lets you, as a user outside of the room, send a state event into the room to say, hey, and it's a membership event, it's a new one, and it says, hey, I'm knocking on this room, and I have this reason for knocking on the room. And then someone who's in the room with authority can go, oh, okay, that sounds cool. Yeah, you seem like a nice person, we'll let you in. Or, haha, no way, Jose, and reject it. So this had been sitting around for a while, and Soru's implementation was good, but it wasn't complete, and the code sort of bit rotted as you moved on to other things. I was tasked with doing this, and also selfishly, this is useful for some bridges as well. It will allow you to ask for permission to join a room from a bridge, and then the bridge can give you access if you have access on the third-party service and all things like that. So I really wanted this as well. So I went ahead and effectively took over the MSC and took over the implementation, and this is what we have today. And there's no client UI support, but it does work, and I will show you through the lovely dev tools of Firefox. So hopefully you got all that. So what I'm going to do is demo you knocking over federation. Now, there are some limitations to doing this over federation, which I'll just briefly mention later. But basically, we have two elements, and one of them is a user on this home server. One of them is another user on another home server. And we're just going to go ahead and create a room real quick. And we're going to make it invite only. And there's an important thing to note here. So this requires opt-in, because we don't really want to introduce this feature to the federation and all of a sudden room admins get knocks on the room and they get really confused and scared. There is a new join rule for knocking, and it's just called knock. And this is in addition to the other join rules we already have. And effectively, it is just the invite join rule, but you can knock on the room. That's all knock is at the moment. So I've created a room. This also requires a new room version, by the way. So expect to see that in the future. This room has been created with that new room version. We're going to go ahead and set the join rule from this room from invite to knock. And that will allow people to knock on the room. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to do that. Like I said, there's no client UI for this, so I'm going to be using just a simple REST client to do this. So I'm going to now act as the second user, which is very Millhouse at the moment. So they will come along and they will say, hello there, I would like to call this CS API endpoint. It's just /rooms, blah, 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 /knock. And you can also provide a reason. Reason is, of course, optional. Here's a reason. It's advised to clients to not display the reason to everyone in the room, because that's effectively allowing people outside the room to send a message. You should just hide it until someone requests to see the reason. But I've gone ahead and knocked now. And what you will see is Element will display that a state event from a user has come in. Now, it doesn't really know what to say here, so it's kind of just sort of blank and a little broken. But this is a knock event. And if we look at the membership for this room, we see that this other user, this is the second user, has a membership of knock, and they have a reason. Great, so clients in the room now know that this person has knocked, and we come over here, and we're going to take a look at the sink for our second user. And what the sink should contain, maybe this sink. that is an options request. Maybe this sync. Yes. So what the sync will contain is a new field, and it's called knock. And this is going to be some state from the room. Now, this is exactly what happens when you get invited to a room. You will receive some state from the room, such as the name of the room, the avatar, and this gives you some context. But it's what's known as stripped state, which means you don't get that many revealing details. You simply get some information that allows you to show in the sidebar of element, you've been invited to this room, and this is a preview of what it looks like. So the same thing happens with knocking. You get the fact that the room is encrypted. You get that its join rules are knock, but you get the room name, which I guess I never set, and also who invited you, and an avatar if that existed as well. So now clients can show somewhere, say like these are your pending knocks, and you're just waiting for this to get answered by someone. And then as the room admin or whoever, to accept a knock, you simply invite the user. To reject the knock, you just kick the user. This will update their membership state to the appropriate states. And if you don't want them knocking anymore, then you ban the user. And the only limitations was you can't unban and you can't reject knocks over federation. And this is due to an issue in the spec that's very complicated. And I was hoping to fix it as part of this, but it's been put out of scope right now. But obviously invites work over federation. So yeah, that will all work. And this is very exciting because it now allows people to request access to a room and gives bridges and bots more functionality overall. So yeah, that's from knocking.
That's very cool. I want it for Cerulean, so that when you're going and following somebody on Cerulean, you want to follow the timeline room, and the way you would do that would be to knock on it to ask permission to follow them, unless of course they have anybody allowed to follow. So really cool to see that in reality.
Yeah.
We are running late. Shall we hurry up?
Yes, Simon. Are you out there? Welcome to your first demo day.
Cheers, yes. So yeah, I'd love to show everyone the VoIP designs. Let me share my screen. Everyone see that?
Yes.
Cool. So yes, why are we working on VoIP? There's a few problems at the moment. So several usability issues exist with the current experience. Can't speak firsthand, but apparently there's a multitude of bugs, performance issues, and stability issues. I think a big one on kind of the design side is kind of missing functionality compared to other tools in the market and what people expect for a really good video voice experience. And at the moment, Jitsi kind of feels tacked on, and it's a totally different experience to native one-on-one matrix calls. So the goals for kind of looking at the design for it were to have a proposal for a new experience for voice and video, where kind of Matrix and Jitsi feel like the same thing and they're kind of blended together, all within Element, and some cross-platform engineering effort to address the problems above. So design-wise, it's about 90% now. We've got kind of all the web designs here, kind of all the Android designs, and all the iOS designs. So I'm just going to go through some of the flows of web. So you can see here, so in just a regular room, we've got a new component for if someone starts a group call. So in this instance, Matthew started a group call. Here's kind of all the states it can be in. So when I answer it, it kind of changes to, hey, you're currently in this call. I can ignore it, but then have the ability to rejoin, and also kind of showing if it's, if the call's still active or if it's ended. And then likewise for a one-on-one, it can either be a voice or a video call. We show in the CTA whether you're going to be answering just with your voice or whether you're going to be answering with video, so you're not, caught off guard. And then similar kind of states for how a call is. And then I can simply tap join, and then we kind of launch into the video call. So it's kind of modeled after the widgets framework, which I assume people are fairly familiar with. But there's a few differences like picture in picture, and you can go full screen and so on. What we're doing if you get a phone call from a different room is kind of displaying it in this component instead. And then if I were to join it, potentially doing something quite cool where it launches just straight into picture in picture. So I'm not kind of distracted from the task at hand that I was doing. But the call can kind of start and I can, contribute. A couple of states for just one-on-one rooms, which I kind of showed above. It's kind of voice and video calls. Something we want to show for the matrix specific video calls is that, hey, this is end-to-end encrypted. So whatever the status of the room or person is, it will be, I believe it will be the same for the VoIP call. Also doing some nice stuff with video voice calls, where we blur background of the call itself and using the profile photo of the person's avatar. If I want to initiate a voice call or a video call, current thinking is we're going to move the icon up to the top right. So it's in kind of the room header. Right now it's down in the composer. But we think it just makes more sense for it to be in the room header because it's kind of a universal action you want to take rather than anything relating to a single message. Potentially also the dial pad will be accessible here, but this is something we're still kind of playing around with, and maybe this is too out there and it actually needs to be tucked away behind a menu somewhere else. If I open the dial pad, it kind of opens like a mini modal, so I can simply just type in a landline number and ring the number. And then there's also a variation of the dial pad that I can open when I'm on a voice or video call as well. If I get a phone call while on a call and I decide to answer that, again, doing something quite nice where Lisa would get paused and go into picture in picture. The second call would take over. We update the left panel to show, hey, Lisa's paused and this call's now active. But at any point I can just resume the call with Lisa and this one would then kind of flip and get paused instead. Just a couple of additional states. Hold in is essentially the same as pausing. And then, being able to transfer the call. So if I want to connect the person I'm speaking to with someone else, I can click transfer. I then have access to all the users in Matrix, so recent folk or kind of everyone. Or I can, again, use the dial pad to connect them with someone else who's not a Matrix user. And then, potentially also screen sharing, so fairly standard, but being able to share either your entire screen or a certain application. So as I said, it's about 90% there on the design front. A few things we're still finalizing, but it's starting to get built kind of, as we speak. So hopefully in the next few weeks we'll have kind of a working version that we can start to test.
It's looking awesome. Thank you so much, Simon, for putting it together. I can't believe that Matrix is getting a dial pad and DTMF support, but watch out, PSTN, we're coming for you.
Very cool.
Cool. What's next, Neil?
Eric, I hear we're going to talk about a Gitter bridge.
Yes. We're going to see...
And welcome as well, by the way. This is you've been on Matrix Live, but this is your first demo day.
First demo day. So current bridging between Gitter and Matrix kind of looks like this. All the messages come through one user called MatrixBot. And on the Gitter side, it looks kind of ugly and hard to parse out who is talking because you have to, this is the author and then their message, but there's no avatar that's uniquely identifying them or their display names and all that nice goodness. So we're working on a new native bridge that's integrated directly into Gitter. and that's what we're going to be showing off today. So we have like a new room or one of your existing rooms. If you just start typing a message on your Gitter room and then go over to the matrix side, you can find it in the element directory. And then you can see right here, it looks and feels like a native user on the matrix side. So that's looks exactly the same as my Gitter user here. And if I type back from my matrix user, it appears with the avatar and all that nice information flows through. And you can also click through on that matrix badge and like see where that person's coming from. So it just opens like a matrix 2 link, and you can jump into Element if you want that way. But we'll be slowly making more progress on more integration features like editing messages and have those flow through natively. And so before it would just like resend the message and be way more cumbersome to try to track what's going on. But we're going to try to make both conversations feel like they're one and the same, and anyone on either side is not going to have a problem communicating with each other. If you want to follow the progress, we have this GitLab epic, which has a bunch of issues linked with more of the details. If you're wanting to read more about the bridge specifically, we have this issue 1684, which goes into more detail of like what's going to be supported and what it's going to look like, and maybe some of the feature mismatches, how we're going to bridge those across. So that's what we're working on for the native bridge side.
Wow, that's even more comprehensive than I was expecting. It was the first time I've seen it, at least. Congratulations, Eric. It was fantastic to see Gitter coming into Matrix properly and vice versa.
Yeah, really good.
Neil, you're saying lots of things, but you are very muted.
I'm muted because there's a firework display going on outside my window. Bruno, hydrogen, last but not least.
Yes, hello everyone. Just want to give a quick update on the last changes this month on hydrogen. I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yep.
So this is hydrogen. I've got my account here. So two big additions to the UX have been the settings pane, where you can see your end-to-end encryption information. And you also have a nicer UX for enabling session backup, which is what I'm going to do now. Yeah, my hydrogen is a bit slow because I have Jitsi open in Chrome as well. So I've got session backup enabled. And there's a specific room I want here. Let's use the filter. It's really slow on the Jitsi. So tests, and it's this one. There we go. No, it's not happy. Let's try that again. There we go. So one big addition is that images are now decrypted in end-to-end rooms, and both in end-to-end and non-end-to-end rooms, you can now click them and they will open in a lightbox in the app like this. And the lightbox is also responsive, so on mobile, the information about it will rather appear underneath. This is getting really slow. And this is also not the thumbnail, but the main image. So if you have a GIF, which I have here in my timeline, if it allows me to scroll up. There we go. The GIF will also play. There's also some improvements to make the images in the timeline. That's not what I want. The images in the timeline a bit more responsive, so it will scale better on mobile now as well. So here you have a GIF playing. And that's it.
Awesome. Encrypted images make everything a lot better and more usable. Very exciting to see hydrogen continuing to come to life. Thank you, Bruno. And is that it, Neil?
Do you know what? I think this is our bumper demo day. But yes, that is it.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for demoing. And hopefully there's some interesting stuff there for the wider audience. And have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.